What is going on, guys? Thanks for watching the channel. Matt Smith here as always. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Been a bit of a strange week for me. Have had some different things pop up, so sorry I didn't have anything out earlier, but definitely want to get into this Cincinnati game because we have a lot to talk about. Certainly hope everybody's doing well out there. Start things off with like a little tale from the last week. I bought a brand new gallon jug for a water bottle, okay? I've wanted like a bigger water bottle. I drink a lot of water, including, you know what? As I say that, a little sip of the seltzer water, the store brand seltzer water. So I buy this big gallon jug and I go to put it in the car and I'm like, oh man, there's like no good spot for a big gallon jug in the car. So I'm like, well, I should probably put it on the floor of the passenger seat. But while I pull out of my driveway, let me just set it on the passenger seat. It ended up tipping over and breaking my sunglasses. I would say that's probably about how this week has gone overall if we had to break it all down for me. So, that's my story. That's my one little tale I'll give you that was emblematic of my week. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Let's talk some Buffs, huh? We spoke to Coach Prime Tuesday. Certainly a lot on the docket and a lot addressed at the press conference. He was, in a good mood. He takes his walks before pressers now. That's kind of his thing where he'll go out, and I imagine some of the coaches or some of his support staff go with him, and they go all around the campus. He says he does it every day, and he does it right before our Tuesday pressers. That's why he's always drinking so much at the pressers because he's thirsty from those walks. He talked about dropping some beautiful bass into some of the local lakes. I don't know how they would do in the wintertime. In the comments, what happens to bass in a winter climate? I mean, they just freeze at the bottom. What happens? I mean, they got to stay alive somehow. I think that's how it works. Other stuff he talked about. He talked about Shane Cokes, and he was talking about this defensive line that now leads the Big 12 in sacks and tackles for loss, by the way, which is a very impressive number, especially considering Colorado's history of having very little success in that department over the last 2 decades by and large. And certainly this season did not start off necessarily strong from a production standpoint from what they got out of their front seven and their edge group, right? Linebackers showed a little bit more early, but certainly of late here, because they've, I think, kind of played a little bit more consistently on both sides of the ball, they've been in more situations to get after the passer. And certainly that defense is playing so much better than last year. I mean, it's tough to even compare it at this stage, quite frankly. And as a result, you got 16 sacks in the last 3 weeks, and now you lead the Pac-12 in the Pac-12. Oh, that's the first time I did that this year. Yeah, that's PJ. He's just walking by. Don't mind him. Uh anyway, so they're leading the Big 12 in sacks, which is a huge deal because you've got some pass rushers that transferred in here that they were very high on, and that we told you before the year that, hey, look, I mean, these guys, if what we're seeing, at that one open practice and what we're hearing about kind of comes to fruition, they could have a lot of depth in that, defensive front. And it's played out so far. And in these last 3 weeks, 16 sacks. I mean, that's go find some seasons. I bet that's pretty close to some season totals. I mean, if you think about it, 16 is a pretty solid number. And if you get that in 3 weeks, means you're getting after the quarterback, doing a good job. And certainly if you're in a situation where you've got the lead like they were down in Tucson, then you can get after the quarterback a little bit more because they're an obvious excuse me, in obvious passing situations, which is where they have been by and large for the most part, over the last 2 decades. It's like, well, we know Colorado's got to pass to get back into this game. Some other interesting notes. He talked about Isaiah Augusta, who will get the start again this week. I think he had 14 carries for 54 or 53 yards, just a tick under 4 yards per carry. I was impressed with Augusta down there in Arizona, although I just think it's more of the rushes that don't gain anything, the rushes that turn into negative plays with maybe a Micah or a Dallin. I just don't think they're really ending up in the backfield all that often with Augusta. But I'd actually be curious to know how many times he's been tackled in the backfield or rushes for no gain or less, because the guy falls forward and he's a bigger body and he hits it harder than they do, in my opinion, at least. And so at the worst, you're getting a better run out of him. And Coach Prime talked about going back to him this week. I love that. We got a chance to meet Isaiah. I'll talk about that here in just a little bit for the first time. And very interesting, soft spoken, good young man, has a daughter. Did not know that. and daughter at a very young age. Did not know that either, and he's driven, and certainly his why is what he said is her, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But also other stuff talked about just the selfless nature of this wide receiver room, right? Like Jimmy Horn had a really big game in week one, but ever since it's kind of been somebody else's day. Well, we knew that about this offense. We knew that about this quarterback. Shadur will make the right play. He's going to make the right read. It's going to be game by game, play by play, down by down. That's how it's going to be for Shadur. And as a receiver coming in, LeJontay Wester, he was the dude at FAU. Will Shepherd, the dude at Vandy, right? They had some other good players, but he was by far, and at least from what I remember, their most productive. So coming into the fold here, you know you're coming to play with a good quarterback because you're sacrificing for the greater good, for the team, for a winning season and a dynamic offense. And that's the deal with everybody, Travis included. And so, look, obviously with Travis, it's a little bit more reliable with trust. But if he's not on the field, look at what those guys have done without him. And it just furthers the point of how is Shadur not in the Heisman race? I mean, he's the best quarterback in the country. Just saying. I think it's a little crazy to me. But we knew that about the receiver room, and I expect Jimmy Horn will continue to be involved throughout the year as he has been to this point. Now he's been banged up too, which hasn't helped his case. The other part of it is I think he's seeing the ball a little bit more on punt returns. LeJontay, he just hasn't been really getting the job done. I know he was, kind of tabbed as a preseason All-American, and did that very well at FAU, but he just hasn't gotten his rhythm here. And I think Jimmy just has demonstrated a more dynamic ability with the ball in his hands, returning punts. And I like the switch there. And Coach Prime talked about how they're trying to get him some more touches there, certainly. Travis update. Travis is apparently better than he was last week, which is a little bit of a surprise to me, to be quite frank with you, considering the fact that I thought he got banged up. He was definitely icing his hand in that Arizona game and didn't play in the second half. But we did see him after the presser. He came in and like kind of sarcastically clapped for Coach Prime and kind of had a little fun at his expense, but a rare, cameo by Travis that wasn't, already scheduled or because of a great performance. And so, obviously Travis, a funny young man. So good to see him, but he did look fine. And he did say on his podcast the other night, he's 100%. So, hey, sign me up. I'm not going to argue with that. If Travis is back, let's rock. That's kind of my thoughts there. And they need him back. I mean, you can definitely feel CU's very talented without him still, but with him, it's just a different beast. That's what really unlocks their full potential because, I mean, he's Travis. I mean, nothing else needs to be said on that. I think we all understand it. Let's see. The start time we talked about, obviously, another late kick. Oh man, Saturday's just a long day up until kickoff. And Coach Prime acknowledged publicly for the first time that they're not as good at night as they are during the day. I think that starts and ends with him. I think he's more of a day morning guy, and so he's the one that has to set that precedent. And that to me really isn't like, oh, we're not good at night. That's a mental thing. Get over that. Like, let's do some things differently, and they are this week. So I credit him because he recognized that the way things had been going, they just haven't been their sharpest at night, and it's certainly because of their schedule. But again, where does the buck stop on that one? That stops with the chief of staff, the man in charge. That's Coach Prime. So look, I think they'll be better, but obviously the reason that Colorado's being put there is because they draw there. Nobody else draws that late. You want to watch Shadur and Travis? You want to watch the best quarterback, the best non-quarterback in the country? Well, you're going to have to stay up late if you're on the East Coast. Game kicks off at 10:15. We know you will because you want to watch him. Sorry. I just like that's kind of ESPN. And again, if Colorado had beaten Kansas State, I wonder if they would have gotten picked up by network TV, because I think Kansas State, Kansas did get picked up by network TV. So look, I mean, take care of your business and maybe don't end up there next time. I think that's probably how it played out. But again, if you kind of put yourself in that position, then they're going to go, well, what's best for business? You are. Okay, great. We're putting you there. Let's see. He talked about the recruiting and the momentum they have, and the fact that obviously we've got to continue to shoot down this false narrative about that they don't play freshmen and they don't recruit from high school. Look at what they've done with the kids who are true freshmen playing on the team. Draylon Miller, right? Jordan Seaton. I mean, go down the list of the guys who have gotten involved. There's a couple of them. Okay, so I think that's part of it, but the other part of it here is they've done things the way they should have done them the last couple of years because they've been trying to microwave this process. The whole narrative of, well, they don't recruit out of high school. Why would you recruit out of high school when you have the best quarterback in the country and the best non-quarterback in the country in Travis Hunter? Why would you do that? Why would you put a bunch of inexperienced players around guys who are ready to win now? They're trying to win now. Moving forward, they'll adjust. They'll make different adjustments based upon what that team needs. Can we develop a little bit more this year because we don't have as much experience as we've had in the past? Okay, great. Let's maybe get another high school kid or two, and I'm sure they'll do that. But the point remains is that they're going to go get the best caliber of player that they can find. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. He talked about how they need a ratio. They're going to get a certain amount of guys, but they're just not going to go pick up guys because they could be a project. They've got to be in love with them. I mean, for the most part, I think they've gotten a couple of those guys, and you need a couple projects, but by and large, they are very, very dialed in with who they're giving offers to. They got better with it this year and had more time and had a bit better pool to recruit from, and they cleaned up. And I expect if they stick around and this is what we do next year and the year after, they'll continue to do the same. Recruiting to me really isn't that much of a concern, although we'll see what happens without Shadur and Travis. Do other kids want to come in and lay their legacies? That's probably going to have to be, a point of emphasis, in recruiting moving forward. It's like, okay, well, look, this is you've got a golden opportunity to make your name here because you're not gonna be overshadowed by Shadur and Travis. You got some great players right now on this team being overshadowed fairly or unfairly because of the special talents that Shadur and Travis are. Probably not going to happen moving forward, at least to a different degree. Because look, you're never. Maybe you will. Highly doubt you find a better quarterback than Shadur moving forward. And Travis, good luck finding another one of those guys. I think we all understand that. I think we were all kind of coming to grips with that about what the future could potentially look like. That's not to say they can't get great players, but it speaks to the special abilities of both Shadur and Travis, certainly. Cincinnati coming in, we'll get to in just a second there. Coach Prime talked about knowing they really need to win out to stay in the Big 12 race. I mean, he didn't say that specifically, but I've heard him and different coaches use the phrase win out. They understand. They know what time it is. They know what time it is. You control your destiny in that. Well, you do and you don't. You don't control your destiny because you got teams in front of you that you need to lose. So by definition, you don't control your destiny, but you control your destiny in that if you want any shot, you just win out. And that's all they're focused on. They know they're better on the road. Coach Prime talked about that. He talked about, they love being booed and naysayed and hated on. And I think they're better as underdogs almost to a degree. And they're not in this game. It's interesting to see the line movement. Started off as a 3-point favorite, now a 5.5-point favorite. Interesting line movement. I mean, if they cover that, if they cover and win by at least 6, that's a really nice win because Cincinnati's a good football team. We'll get there in a second. Let's see. I think that the last point on being better on the road, though, they know they need to be better at home. Like I don't think they really have a signature win outside of like chaotic ones at home. Maybe the Nebraska game last year, but it just felt like, look, if Jeff Sims doesn't, fumble, the football all over the field, who knows what that game looks like because it didn't break open until he started doing that. They were much better. They were going to win that game either way. Point was, is it was a dominant win, but it was, it didn't, to me at least, it didn't feel like it. It was nice to see them lean on him, I guess, but it was just one of those where they still are waiting for that moment. Like Baylor was amazing, obviously, and CSU last year, amazing, obviously, but a dominant win. I don't think we've really seen a dominant kind of put your stamp on it win at home where you can point to it on the wall and go, remember the night we beat the hell out of Cincinnati on this field? You could do that, I think, with Cincinnati, be honest with you, especially because I think they're a team that comprises a lot of what you've seen before. Get to that in a second, though. I asked Coach Prime about some of his decision making on the fourth downs that we've seen this year. It's just kind of felt like, and this is gonna sound like I'm being critical, but it's not, and you'll understand why after. It feels like sometimes he's just kind of flying by the seat of his pants on some of these, which I love to a degree because a lot of coaches just won't coach by feel. A lot of guys won't do it. And I think that's so important that you have your finger on the pulse and that you're paying attention to what's going on around you. And look, you're not afraid to roll the dice if the moment calls for it and you feel like your guys are dialed in and ready. I really respect that about Coach Prime because there's so many guys that are terrified to do it. There are just some times where I think there's I don't know, like the 4th and 3. I think pretty sure they're in the red zone in the second half against Cincinnati, and Shadur throws his second pick. I understand you probably wanted a little momentum because the offense stalled out. Let's kick that. Let's kick that one. There are just a couple of them that I just they've been risky, and certainly the reason why they're having to go for so many of those is because they don't have a kicker that can do it. That's true. Mata may have won Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week, and this is not a shot at him. He was 2 for 2, and I guess had 10 points, right? With all makes there, which was impressive. The only other person to vote for was a returner who had 3 returns for 77 yards. No other kicker in the Big 12 almost did it again. Wow, that's a first time this season. I don't know what's going on about this week. Almost did it again, Pac-12. There were only 2 kickers in the Big 12 this week that even made 2 field goals, and Mata was the only one that made 2 without missing. 34-28, a couple of chippies, but look, I mean, they all count the same. That being said, they're definitely in some positions from time to time because they don't have a guy they can trust to go really beyond 45. That's the truth. Mata's made it, but as far as a guy they trust, and even Coach Prime on the 4th and 10 call said they didn't get to the flag, and I'm pretty sure they were at the 30. I mean, I think that's a 48-yard field goal, so look, I mean, not having a guy that you feel comfortable with enough to even try that. So it is what it is. We've been dealing with this now for 2 years. We understand. We know what time it is in that regard, meaning time to go get a real leg, and they know that, which is why Rhett Armstrong is going to be visiting, and he is a Baylor commit right now from Palmer Ridge who's got a hell of a leg. I call this kid the Stork. He just got these big old gangly legs and boots it. Made a 62-yarder, I believe, earlier this year at his high school season, and he knows what it's like to kick at altitude. And I think on his social media profile, he's a 5-star kicker, which I mean, okay. But either way, dude's got a leg. They need a leg. I think we all understand that now. I don't think I need to belabor that point any more than we have all season long and last year. But either way, I don't have too much of an issue with some of the gambles, but it's clear they don't pay attention to any analytics. They don't have that in the department. It's just Coach Prime. That's his philosophy, and I don't think that's wrong. I like I said, if you could ask me one of the two, I'd probably rather coach by feel. I would. I'm one of those guys. So I just wanted to know his thought process behind it. Like, is it a collective? Are you getting with Shermer? Are you getting with Livingston? Are you talking this over? Or is this just you making the calls? And he basically said, look, that's on me. I'm making all those calls. And I love it. I mean, he's got his finger on the pulse. They're doing a great job right now. It's just sometimes it's like, oh, well, you're definitely not supposed to go for that one, and they do. And so that's why I was wondering, like, how do they arrive there? Is there, because I mean, you see college teams all over, NFL teams, it's kind of commonplace now to have those guys in the booth that are kind of like 3 steps ahead of where you guys are at, so that when those come there and you need your options presented to you, hey, what's my math here, or what's my thoughts here, or what should, what is book, what do the numbers say here? Then you got somebody in your ear. You hear about that all the time. They don't, which is, look, I mean, different strokes for different folks. I mean, I doubt that Coach Prime would want to listen to anybody else, no matter how qualified they were anyway. And that's not, a shot at or anything. That's just because he has the ultimate belief in himself. So, which that's what you want in your head coach, and your coaching staff for that matter. Other stuff from Coach Prime. Obviously, talking about Jordan Seaton, and that's kind of where we'll transition here, just making sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, Jordan Seaton, he was asked about him, and he's talked about, look, Jordan's lived up to the billing. This is who we knew we were recruiting. Okay, when he committed to us, this is what we knew we were getting, and he's done that and more. And he's just kind of talked about how he's constantly on Jordan not to start, believing the hype and reading his headlines, and just stay humble, because the secret sauce to who Jordan Seaton really is, and what separates him is his humility, his drive, and who he is as a human being. And we got a chance to speak to Seat this week as well. And, it just kind of ties back to the very first time that I met him, and that I just kind of looked him up and down and just went, like, I could see it's going to sound crazy, but I could see the gold jacket on him. Like, he is as mature as it gets for any 18-year-old that I've ever covered, any freshman I've ever covered. He's the total package. He has it all. He's so intelligent, he's so humble, he's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think they've done a really good job, and credit to Coach Prime, to Shadur, and to the rest of that offensive line for kind of taking him in. And I was listening to the coaches show, and Coach Prime talked about how, look, they kind of treat him like a little brother, right? Well, that's obvious. You can see Justin Mayers, Khalil Benson, Tyler Brown, all these guys kind of just kind of bringing him in and making sure that they're keeping their eye on him and that they're imparting their wisdom onto him. And he's been a sponge. It's not like he's come in, I'm a five-star, respect me. I mean, no, he's very confident in who he is and his ability. Number one over all else, which you have to have, and you expect coming out of the best tackle, in the country coming in. And it's just more like it's the humility thing. Like, he's coachable. He's an empath. I feel like he's just I don't know what else to say. Like, I talk about being in awe of Travis. I'm in awe of who Jordan Seaton is at 18 years old, because the young man has the world by the balls. Okay. He just might not really know it yet, but part of me thinks he does, because when you hear him talk about why he came here and things he was evaluating, and, he gets it. Okay. And I don't know how else to even put it. He understands, he's aware of himself. He's aware of the situation. He's aware of kind of what opinion is, but he marches to the beat of his own drum. And I really respect that about him, because that's not an easy thing to do in 2024 at 18 years old, when everyone's life is on social media and it's all about conformity. To break from the norm and to be yourself, it's not as easy, in my opinion, as it used to be, because I think you just have so much comparing going on that these kids are doing on social media every single day, that you don't see a ton of it. And you can just see his strong sense of belief in who he is in his soul. So I have the utmost respect for Jordan. And if he stays at CU for 3 years, he's got to go down, and hopefully as the best offensive lineman they've ever had. I mean, guy's gonna be a top five pick. He will be. He talked about it the other day, and I'm glad he brought it up. But he will be the best, the first tackle off the board, and he talked about in 2026 when he gets drafted. So I got no doubt. And I think he loves it here. I think Boulder suits him really well, but make no mistake, he wants to compete. He takes this very seriously, and I think he is eagerly awaiting, in the back of his mind, who's next after Shadur as well. And that's something, look, I mean, Coach Prime talks about all the time how you never know. Sometimes you get guys who jump in the portal and you never expected them to, but you got to be dialed in and prepared for all that. And that's one thing that I believe that they will be, but that's something that they know they got to get the centerpiece for their next draft class or next recruiting class. That isn't news to anybody, which is why Juju Lewis will make his fourth visit to Colorado on Saturday. This is the last push, I think, for Juju. Like, this is gonna be the last look, the last time you're window shopping here. And we'll see what happens. I think they got a shot. I mean, he wouldn't be coming here again and blowing off Indiana last week, who's having a really nice season, if he weren't interested. That I know. That I know. It's not cloud anymore. Like, you can't even go, well, he's coming here for the, all this other stuff, because he's been here. He doesn't need all that. He was just, what was he, just made the number two player in the country by ESPN in their latest ESPN 300 rating. Where it becomes interesting is if he does flip, what he becomes. I imagine everybody's going to dump him down to a two-star because he's going to CU, right? That's how it works, isn't it? Um, yeah, so Seaton just you hear him talk, and I mean, if Juju's coming, I bet that's a guy that he'd want to play with too. So we'll just have to see it plays out. Have to see how it plays out. We also spoke to Keaton Wade, brother of Destin, right? And those two came from Kentucky. We saw Keaton with the monster breakout game in Tucson, played really well. They created packages just for him. He was hurt dealing with that foot injury, and he clearly stayed with the assignment and understood and took to coaching, okay? And understood Coach Prime when he says, if you bust in practice and you prove you can do it here, you will earn snaps. Well, I love what they've done with him. Strategic redshirt usage. Mike McIntyre did that a little bit, if memory serves. And look, you got 4 games to play. Get these guys some experience, which is why I can't help but wonder if Brandon Hood is a guy who falls into that category. I asked Coach Flea about him this week to get there in a second, but I wonder on him too, because if he feels like a candidate and somebody that, just from a physical perspective, what we saw when we were down at the open practice and some of the stuff on well off, he's got some traits, man. He's got some ability, but for some reason right now, it's just, he's on the scout team. He can't break that mold. And I can't help but wonder if at some point this year, maybe we don't see them try and break the seal off of him a little bit, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case at this stage. But look, we also heard about Dallin Hayden continuing to be banged up and Micah Welch. They tried to get him going with that hamstring that he's battling. So, if injury dictates it, maybe. Isaiah Harge also, gave him some interesting minutes, carries rather there in the spring game, if memory serves. I wonder if that's even a consideration, but they got Draylon Miller, so probably not. That's why they gave Harge the two ways. Look, I think there's some interesting things in that running back room, and I just want to finish Keaton Wade. I think the one cool part about that situation for him is that that's a guy who just seems like such a good person and seems like such a smart young man and is in it for the long haul and understands the vision and is bought in. And that type of a player is a testament to what they have done. And he's been and he clearly proved to be a very valuable weapon. And they got 3 more games that they could, choose to burn him in. So I'll be interested to see how they use him moving forward. I mean, he's certainly earned an opportunity to go out and prove that he can do a little bit more. And hey, I mean, you're never going to apologize if you got another pass rusher. You can never have enough. I think we know that about that position. I think when we talk about Coach Flea, these dogs, man, dogs, bro. Does it get better? When we talk about Coach Flea, did not know that he had brain surgery. I saw the scar. I did notice it in the fall. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's that. I thought it was an older thing though, but he talked about how he had to have it and he wanted to wait. And Coach Prime said, no, look, this is something you need to go handle right now. The dogs and the squirrels, man. I mean, it is always, I got the one squirrel that just tortures these dogs. He talks about how, look, he didn't want to do that, and Coach Prime said, "Look, we need to get this taken care of. You don't want to play around with something like this." And I love that because it just shows you, it's all about the people, and everybody talks about how, it's all about him and his family, and that's all that matters. It's not. It's everybody around him. If you're in his circle, you matter to him. Isaiah Augusta, Coach Flea talked about how he bounced back really well from the fumble and that he's been, doing the right things and that he's hungry and he wants it. And, it's a testament to who he is as well to see that how he has bounced back and they've helped him out with, moving on from that mentally. And we were curious about how they kind of handle those things. Interesting interview. You want to hear any of that? Go ahead, and it's on the channel as well as all these interviews from this week as well. Cool talking to Isaiah Augusta, right? I mean, this is a guy who came on at the end of the last year at Arkansas and had some moments there and had some bigger games and then transfers into Colorado in a position group where everybody leaves from the year before. Zoe, will you absolutely knock it off? I mean, just knock it off. You're fine. You were outside all day long. You don't need to be back out there. Leave the squirrel alone. I mean, it's unbelievable with you right now. Hey, hey, come here. Let's go. Get over here. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. I just can't deal with the whining at the door. They've been outside all day. They're fine. Don't worry. I might take care of my dogs. And after this, we're going. You know where we're going. WALK. Yes, you understand that. Anyway, Isaiah Augusta talked about having a daughter and just, I love the fact that this is a guy who is in it for all the right reasons. And he goes, look, if I don't play well, she doesn't eat. And I mean, I think if anybody puts pressure on him, he does it to himself more than anybody is what I was trying to say. Jeez. Uh, I think he's raw though. He's soft spoken, very, very kind young man, and he'll continue to develop if he stays in this program and he stays here. I think this is a guy who has a very bright future ahead of him as potentially your lead back moving forward, or at least a guy who factors in heavily in your running game because he's got some stuff that you just can't teach, and he's got some raw ability that you would be lucky to find in the open market. And let's hope that he continues to blossom as well as the rest of their running game. We also spoke to Arden Walker this week. Arden Walker is a veteran leader on this team. Of course, the kid from Cherry Creek, Colorado kid, played at Missouri. I love that he's here. I think he's a great person to have in that locker room. He's an important voice in that locker room. And certainly, I think he's been really, really great with the run contain. He's somebody that I think helped them in that UCF game. I'm getting licks all up and down the leg. These guys are just insatiable right now. So I like that he's here because he is somebody that knows what it's supposed to look like in Boulder and takes pride in the black and gold because of the black and gold, not just kind of because of the team. And not saying nobody else does, but that you need those guys in Charlie and the governor. And I love that Arden Walker, the difference is Arden's a real contributor where some of those other guys are maybe kind of fringe guys on the team. And not that they haven't been in practice, but he's a guy that's one of your, certainly key players there on the defensive edge. There's no doubt about it. And he's been really good against the run. I think he's probably one of their better guys at setting an edge against the run and really good in the quarterback contain. He talked about how they've gotten better in that regard. Let's talk about Cincinnati a little bit. Look, 5-2, they're a good football team. I think they represent a lot of what they've seen before. They've got a defensive tackle who kind of reminds me a little bit of the force that we saw at Nebraska with those two behemoths that Nebraska had. The other thing I think you've seen with this Cincinnati team, they kind of run the ball a little bit like Kansas State and a little bit like North Dakota State. Not really like Nebraska. I would say that there's a lot more window dressing in their offense. They're going to show you this tight formations and a lot of different formations, formational variety. They like to throw a bunch of different looks at you. And their quarterback, Brendan Zorsby, now this is a guy who can get out and motor and he can throw the football. Okay. He gets rid of the ball quickly. And do you hear this? Do you hear this? No, absolutely not. Not when you're acting like this. We just give me 5 seconds. Oh, okay. Where was I? I had to let them outside. They are just tortured by those squirrels, and they've got me wrapped around their fingers, so they win. What can I say? What can I say? Love those dogs. So Cincinnati, they run the ball a little bit like Kansas State. Kiner's got a little bit of that DJ Giddens to him, where he's a yards after contact guy, real physical, real tough to bring down. Okay, and Pryor, if you give him a hole, he'll hit it, and he'll hit a home run. Real speed there, and it all starts up front with their offensive line, who all played together last year, right? You've got 5 guys there who know what they're doing, and I think it's clear when you watch the tape that they're really well coached, both sides of the football. Now, they may not be dominant in any one category, except for I think they're a pretty damn good running team. They do have a good receiver in Xavier Henderson, too, who's probably in the top 3 guys that they've faced this year. But, they put the clamps on Teteroa McMillan. So as long as there's no, busted coverages, I think they'll be fine with Xavier Henderson. But he will play in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. So definitely have to be aware of who he is and where he is and what they're doing with him. So, this is a team that they're going to show you a lot. Like I said, window dressing, pre-snap motion, gap assignment, gap assignment, gap assignment. Huge game for Shiloh. Huge game for Shiloh. Okay, to bounce back and to atone a little bit at home. He played much better, I felt like, in Arizona. They got him involved early with the blitz that Livingston sent him on, and I need to see that continue. And I think we will, because that's by and large, when he's been healthy, all we've really seen from Shiloh is him find a way to impact the game. So I'm expecting a big one from him, because it could be one of those situations where you need your safeties to come up and make plays in the box, and I think that it probably will be. I don't even have a doubt about that one. I used to be tight back and forth. Their defense, they got a good front 3. They got a D tackle who's just a beast. Okay, this kid's he's a horse, and I feel like they saw a little bit of that with the guys that they saw at Nebraska. But what are they going to show you haven't seen? I don't think much. I don't think much. And I think they represent the best team left on Colorado's schedule. So with that being said, huge opportunity at Folsom Field. Right a lot of wrongs. And credit to Brian Howell for this number. If you take 2020 out, and it was the COVID year, so I don't think any of us really count that, Colorado is 0 for their last 11 in opportunities with bowl eligibility on the line. 0 for their last 11. When you When all of the CU fans who have, come in with Coach Prime and started to learn about CU and become a fan over the last 2 years, understand that's where some of the crap in the back of our heads comes from. They're 0 for their last 11 outside of the COVID year where they only won 4 games with bowl eligibility on the line. A lot of heartbreak, okay? A lot of heartbreak. So understand, maybe that's I when Brian told me that when I did his podcast, by the way, go check it out. We talked about our perspective on this week on his channel. Um, I thought to myself, man, that is a really good way to put it to a lot of the people who are always in the comments going, y'all gotta get rid of all that stuff. You get rid of an 0 for 11 streak with ball eligibility on the line. Gonna need to see it to believe it. And it's not because of who they are, it's because of what has happened here. Understand that. Okay. I also grew up a Cubs fan. Heartbreak was my thing. And then, 2016, all the joy in the world. So look, it can happen, and I believe that it will happen. I've got Buffs 31-27. I think Cincinnati's a very solid football team. They do things the right way. They're well coached. They're not going to really beat themselves. This game to me, though, is more about Colorado. How sound do they play defensively? How ready are they to go in this game? Cincinnati is one of the best first quarter teams in the country. I think they're outscoring opponents, I want to say like 73 to 28, 29, something like that. Okay, it's a really impressive number. They get on you. Colorado cannot get behind because the last thing you want to do is fall behind. And we talk about this. Let them extend drives to their running game, right? Stay on the field, keep Shadur on the sideline. Can't have that happen. Colorado themselves is going to have to run the ball in this football game. And even Coach Prime talked about that on the coaches show. This is a game where Colorado's running game will have to be effective as well as they'll have to be committed to it because you want to sustain drives. You want to pin Cincinnati's defense. You want to keep that big boy on the interior on the field late in the fourth quarter where he's sucking wind. That's what you want to do. That's how you win this football game. And I believe that they're going to take that approach. So we'll see. Tighter formations, quick game. I love how they cleaned all that stuff up last week. That was really good to see. Let's see. It was a lot more of the slants, a lot more of the outs, a lot more outlets for Shadur in the passing game, so he doesn't have to be. They don't even give him an opportunity to get touched when you're getting the ball out that fast, and that was a point of emphasis last week, and he carried through on it, and it was great to see. So here we go again, and into the bye week we go. It gets harder the later we go, and this will be the last game in October. Okay, the gold games are up next. Set yourself up to be in it to win it and not on the sidelines down the stretch because you're going into a bye week. You don't want to sit with that. You don't want to sit with that. And I know they don't. And I know they don't. I appreciate everybody for watching the channel. Like and subscribe as always.